In the heart of the Roaring Twenties, trains were supposed to embody progress, yet they still clung to Victorian excess, weighed down by ornate ironwork and coal smoke. But when Art Deco's radical lines collided with the ambitions of railroad empires, everything changed. Streamliners became symbols of modernity, redefining speed and national pride. Yet most people have never seen how this transformation really began, or how close we came to missing it. What did the world have to lose if trains had stayed trapped in the past? Victorian railways wore their ambitions on their sleeves, each tunnel a castle gate, every bridge a tangle of iron lace. Passenger stations rose like cathedrals, thick with carved stone and gilded clocks, as if travel itself required a sense of ritual. Steam engines thundered beneath archways, heavy with ornament, their silhouettes lost in a haze of soot and swirling smoke. Yet beneath all the grandeur, these trains moved through a world that was changing faster than their facades could keep up. In Detroit, 1914, Michigan Central Station opened its doors. Designed by Warren and Wetmore and Reed and Stem, the same architects behind Grand Central Terminal, it towered above the city, its Beaux-Arts lines stretching skyward for 18 stories. Classical columns framed the main entrance, lending the station a sense of permanence and order. Inside, sunlight filtered through arched windows onto marble floors, casting long shadows across travelers hurrying to their trains. At the time, it was the tallest rail station in the world, a monument to the scale and confidence of American railroads. But even as Michigan Central Station set new records for height and ambition, it echoed a style rooted in the past. Its symmetry and ornament spoke of tradition, not speed. The building's vast waiting rooms and grand concourse were designed to impress, not to move crowds quickly. As cities grew and the pace of life accelerated, this weight of history began to feel less like a celebration and more like a burden. The world outside was growing restless for something new, something that could match the rhythm of the age. By the early 1920s, railway posters had become laboratories for a new visual language. In Paris, Adolphe Mourant, better known as Cassandre, began to strip trains down to their essence. His posters for the Chemin de Fer du Nord reduced locomotives to wedges of steel and shadow, rails collapsing into a single vanishing point. Letters were not just captions, they became part of the architecture, stretched across the image like girders. The effect was immediate. Travel was no longer about arrival, but about motion itself. The term Art Deco would not appear in print until 1968, when Beavis Hillier's book gave a name to what designers of the 1920s simply called modern. Yet the style's geometry and optimism were everywhere. British Railways and the London Underground borrowed these cues, filling stations with bold posters, vivid color blocks, sans serif type, and simplified forms, casting the Underground as a rational, modern space. The same visual grammar spread across Europe and beyond, from the crisp diagonals of French and British advertising to Soviet propaganda posters. Designers such as Alexander Deinecke and Vladimir Dlugak compressed entire rail networks into thrusting lines of red and yellow, blocky type fused to the steel, trains charging toward the horizon as emblems of socialist progress. While graphic designers distilled speed and power into two dimensions, a handful of engineers began to experiment with streamlining in metal. In the United States, the McKeen Motor Car Company produced a gasoline-powered rail car with a pointed wind-splitter nose and circular porthole windows, a shape that looked more like the future than anything else on the rails in 1917. Though plagued by mechanical troubles, the McKeen car hinted at what was coming. A world where the promise of speed would be built into the very bones of the train. In Germany, the pursuit of speed took on a daring form in 1929. Franz Krukenberg's Schienenzeppelin thundered down the rails, its aluminum body tapering like an airship and a spinning propeller pushing it past 230 kilometers per hour, 143 miles an hour, a world record for rail at the time. Yet for all its velocity, the Schienenzeppelin's exposed propeller and single-car layout made it a technical dead end. Railway officials and engineers, wary of safety hazards and operational headaches, shelved the project. The propeller threatened anyone near the tracks, and the design made it impossible to reverse or to couple extra cars. In the aftermath, German engineers began to focus on a different vision: speed without risk and style that could be scaled up for real service. The answer arrived in 1933 with SVT 877, soon known as the Flying Hamburger. This diesel-electric train set aside the spectacle of open machinery for a fully enclosed, streamlined shell. Its rounded nose and smooth underbody were shaped by wind tunnel tests, drawing on the aerodynamic work of Paul Jarre and Wunibald Kamm. The Flying Hamburger averaged 77 miles per hour between Berlin and Hamburg, outpacing nearly every scheduled train in the world. Crucially, it could do so safely, with passengers and crew protected inside, and with maintenance and coupling practical for everyday operation. Behind these changes lay more than engineering bravado. The economic pressures of the early 1930s forced designers to justify every new form. Streamline Modern, as it would later be called, was as much about cutting cost as cutting drag. By enclosing engines and carriages in smooth, welded shells, railways promised both efficiency and a visual break from the past. The era of streamliners was not born from spectacle alone, but from the hard logic of safety, economics, and the need to convince a skeptical public that the future of travel could be both beautiful and practical. Union Pacific's M1000 arrived in early 1934 as a revolution of aluminum and ambition. Its rounded nose, painted in vivid yellow and brown, looked more at home on a futuristic airliner than on a railroad siding. The train's body, built almost entirely from lightweight aluminum, weighed barely 85 tons for 3 articulated cars, nearly a third lighter than the steel steam trains it was meant to outpace. Union Pacific's engineers borrowed ideas from aviation: smooth riveted skins, a continuous roofline, and a powertrain that ran on distillate fuel instead of coal. The M1000 toured the country as a rolling exhibit, drawing crowds in every city. But it was at Chicago's Century of Progress Fair, set on special tracks along the lakefront, that the spectacle unfolded. Visitors queued for hours to step inside, marveling at the airplane-style construction, the absence of smoke, and bold claims of 90 miles per hour cruising speeds. Promotional displays boasted of overnight schedules and fuel savings, promising a new era for rail travel. On May 26, 1934, the Burlington Pioneer Zephyr made the leap from prototype to legend. Leaving Denver just after dawn, its stainless steel body flashed across the plains, propelled by a diesel engine and a promise of speed. The Zephyr covered 1,015 miles to Chicago in 13 hours and 5 minutes, averaging 78 miles per hour, a feat confirmed in next morning headlines and company press releases. The train's arrival at the fairgrounds, still gleaming from its record run, drew throngs of visitors who crowded the platforms and filled the cars. Inside, the Bud Company displayed cutaway diagrams of shot-welded stainless steel, charts of fuel economy, and route maps tracing the Zephyr's historic path. Over the summer, millions of fairgoers filed through both Streamliners, comparing aluminum and steel, yellow and silver, theory and proof. The press called them trains of tomorrow, and for a moment the American imagination belonged to the Streamliner. Designers and railroad executives took note: from this day forward, style would be as important as speed. In 1934, New York Central's J1 Hudson number 5344 reappeared as the Commodore Vanderbilt, its iconic upside-down bathtub shroud turning a standard steam locomotive into a rolling advertisement for modernity. Yet beneath the smooth steel, the original mechanics remained, and engineers found the extra tons of sheet metal made routine maintenance more tedious, with little to show in real-world speed. On the Pennsylvania Railroad, Raymond Loewy's streamlined K4 and the welded, pinstriped GG1 electric offered a different vision. Their flowing forms and integrated striping a direct negotiation between design and engineering practicality. Loewy's sketches often clashed with shop superintendents over access panels and ventilation, but his silhouettes endured in the public eye. Across the Atlantic, the same debate played out. Britain's A4 Pacifics, the Dutch DE3 Soviet IS-class engines, and Japan's C-53 all adopted streamlined shells, each borrowing cues from their neighbors. For a moment, style seemed to win. Globally, the streamlined locomotive became the very image of progress, even as the mechanical realities remained stubbornly unchanged. By the early 1940s, the exuberance of streamlining collided with the realities of war. Posters that once boasted bold silhouettes and sunlit beaches gave way to the pared-down graphics of the WPA, thick lines, muted colors, and messages urging rationing and restraint. Sascha Maurer's streamlined locomotives for the New Haven Railroad, once celebrated in crisp, low-angle posters, now stood alongside government warnings about fuel and necessity. Art Deco's glamour, once a symbol of progress, was labeled excessive, too much for a country focused on victory and survival. Yet the essence of streamlining survived beneath the surface. When Japan's Shinkansen Zero Series debuted in 1964, its bullet-nosed profile carried forward the visual DNA of the 1930s. France's TGV and Germany's ICE would follow, each one echoing the promise of speed and unity first sold on posters and platforms decades before. Even as austerity reigned, the dream of the Streamliner never truly vanished. Art Deco's lines still echo in every modern high-speed train, proving that design shapes not just machines, but the way we imagine progress. As railways reinvent themselves for a new century, the legacy of streamlining endures, reminding us that the future always begins with the boldness to rethink the ordinary.